Are you ready for Wonderful Wednesday? I am so happy you guys are joining me today, and I can't wait to draw this really awesome Brawny Bull with you. Cohen is helping me again this week. I hope you have a great time with us. It made me think of the story of Paul Bunyan and his ox Blue. Way back in the olden days, when the big woods stretched clear across America from coast to coast, a bouncing baby was born in Maine. This baby was called Paul Bunyan, and he was a mighty big boy. Baby Paul was so big it took 5 storks to bring him when he was born. By the time he was a week old, he was wearing his father's clothes. When he was hungry, he drank all the milk of 12 cows. When he got the hiccups, everyone ran out of their houses, thinking it was an earthquake. When he sneezed, folks had to open their umbrellas all the way in California. This is a crazy, silly folk tale. When Paul Bunyan grew up, he knew there was only one job for him. Folks were a moving west in those days, and they all needed houses. They needed firewood and furniture and all kinds of things made of wood. And Paul Bunyan knew he would be the biggest and best logger in the country. Paul Bunyan set up his logging camp on the Onion River. He had so many men in his camp, they worked in 3 groups. One group was always going to work, one was working, and one was coming back. Paul's voice was so loud all the men had to wear earmuffs so they wouldn't go deaf. It took a lot of food to feed all those men. The cook set up a pancake griddle bigger than a skating rink, and that's how his assistants greased it up, skating around the griddle with bacon strapped to their feet. The cook was nearsighted, though. One day, he put blasting powder in the batter instead of baking powder, and those pancakes blew the roof clear off the cook's house. Paul Bunyan had a mighty big axe. It was so big he could chop down 40 acres of trees in one swing. One day, he got tired while he was heading back to camp, so he let his axe drag behind him. That axe opened up a big old crack folks now call the Grand Canyon. Now, the winter of 47 was colder than the coldest winter the old graybeards could remember. It was so cold the words froze in the air as you said them. Then there was a huge chatter in the spring when they all thawed at the same time. It was so cold even the snow turned blue. But the snow and the cold didn't bother Paul Bunyan. Why not? Because Paul Bunyan walked the snowbanks. Were so afraid of getting stepped on, they moved clear out of his way. So Paul Bunyan was walking out in the woods during the winter of the blue snow. The snowbanks moved away, and under the biggest snowbank was a big blue baby ox. The ox was born white, but he turned blue on account of the blue snow. Paul cradled the ox in his arms and took him home. The ox gave Paul Bunyan's face a big, sticky lick, and they became great friends. Paul called the blue ox Babe, and the name stuck even when Babe grew bigger than Paul. Babe was so big it took 47 axe handles to measure between his horns. He was so long, if you or I stood at his tail, we'd need a telescope to see his nose. When Babe wanted a snack, he ate 30 stacks of hay in one bite, wire and all. With Babe around, Paul Bunyan could work twice as fast. As quickly as Paul cut down a tree, Babe hauled it away. When Paul Bunyan wanted to skin a log, he hitched Babe up to one end and held the bark himself on the other. And Babe would pull the log out clean as a whistle, leaving Paul holding the bark. Around camp, the men hung up their shirts to dry on Babe's horns, but Babe's most important job was making the logging roads straight by pulling out their twists and turns. So there's a lot more we could read about Paul Bunyan and little blue Babe, the blue ox. I'm going to leave you guessing, and maybe another day we'll finish this story. But now it's time for you to start drawing. Hey guys, Mrs. Kingsley here with
Cohen.
And we're going to draw a Brawny Bull with you today. You're going to need a pencil and a Sharpie and some paper. Here we go. We're going to start with we're going to draw lightly with a pencil because we're going to erase it later. We're going to start with a nice big rectangle. Maybe just a little bigger at the top than at the bottom. And you can do a sketchy line. Nice, okay. And there's no reason to erase, we'll just keep going because we're gonna Sharpie later. We're gonna start with a V. It's gonna be longer on the right and a little shorter on the left. Okay, on top of that, we're gonna add a line on top to about, halfway. Then it's gonna angle down. And it's gonna go straight out and curve to connect. This is gonna be the bull's big, massive head. He's leaning off to the side. This is his nose, and he's got his eyes over here. So we're gonna give him some U's for eyes. His eyes are closed. He's thinking of how dreamy he looks. He's gonna be flexing his muscles in this one. His eyebrows are tilted out. We're gonna do 2 spirals for the nostrils on his nose. A big curve for a smile. Both have little ears. It's gonna be a line with a curve. And then he has 2 horns. We're gonna start with a little curve here on the corner. And kind of like a triangle on top. It's got a little curve to it. I like to call maybe a curved triangle. And then his second horn comes from behind his head and it matches the other horn. Okay, now we're gonna jump down to his legs. We're gonna have an angle on each side. And then in the middle of there, we're gonna add the line for in between. And we're gonna have 1 line that comes down and 1 line that comes down for his legs. We're gonna do the outside edge of each leg. We're gonna connect across on this one. And we're gonna add a tiny little angle on this one before we connect across. So we're gonna go out a little bit and then connect. Nice, good job, Cohen. Okay, from this angle, we're gonna go to this corner. We're gonna connect across, angle the corner. And for his other foot, we're gonna do just another line over here. So now we've got our Brawny Bull's head and his legs, and we're ready for his big buff muscles up top. We're gonna start with 1 big bump for a bicep on each side. Boom, boom. Nice, then his arm's gonna reach up and up. We're gonna put a little rectangle for his hand, little rectangle. It's gonna point in towards his head. And do 1 on each side. And the other side of his arm comes down and angles over to his body. Comes down and angles over to his body. Oh, he's getting so muscly. Oh, we don't want to miss the rest of his muscles. He's got a little bump here and here. Those are curved lines, kind of like a smile. And then he has his chest muscles. 1, 2. And don't forget his muscly ab line. And we're gonna make kind of a rounded rectangle. So it's gonna be a rounded on top and short rounded on bottom.
It sort of looks like a guy.
I know, it's like a face, doesn't it? And then they're gonna curve and connect. Okay, now we're gonna grab our marker. Some of these lines we're not going to keep. so you can follow along with Cohen and I as we find the lines we want to keep. We're going to start with each of his rectangle hands. Go ahead and trace those, because those are keeper lines. We're going to follow down and go on the bump of his muscle and over to his ear or his head. And we're going to jump over to the other side along the top of his shoulder, bump over his bicep and up to his hand. Very good. Now let's start back over here. We're going to go down and give him a little bit of fur on the ends of his elbows. Just a little zigzag line. And over. And we want to keep a little overlap here, so we're not going to go all the way to the top. We're going to go right here, just a little into his armpit, and we're going to go down and down along the side of his leg to his foot. We're going to keep going around the bottom of his foot, up to his legs, across, down, over. Keep his little foot. Follow it back up to his other armpit. And you're going to overlap just a tiny bit on his armpit. See if it matches your other one. Good. Now go back for his feet. Let's get the two lines across his feet. Looking good. Okay, back to his armpit. We're going to go over. Don't forget the elbow hair. You can still add it in. Go on. And up to his hand. Okay, now a lot of these other lines, some of them are going to erase. So let's do it together. We're going to do the rounded rectangle around his belly. His muscles, his chest muscles, and his abs. Boom. The curves of his biceps. And then we're only going to keep some of the parts around his face. So we're going to keep the ear attached to the face. We're going to follow the face line around the edge. But stop when you get to his horn. Nice job, Colin. Go to his the front horn, this one. We're gonna do the rainbow or the U and the horn. Nice job. And connect to his ear, and then his other horn's behind. Okay, we can trace in the lines on his face. I'm gonna make my spiral a little bigger so my marker doesn't make it a big black hole. And then you're ready. If it does make it a big black hole, that's fine. You can make them black holes. That looks good too. Check Cohen's out. Nice job, Cohen. Okay, then the extra lines we're gonna erase and we're gonna color.
Oops, we forgot his tail, Mom.
I think we better add it. We're gonna come off to the side. We're gonna make a teardrop shape. It's gonna be round with a point at the end. And then curve to connect, double line. Our special challenge is for you to add a creative and interesting background. Cohen and I are going to do our own thing on the backgrounds, and we'll show you it in the